Hello, New Zealand. This is Political Playback. It is episode 33 on the 22nd of May, and it is budget day. Some people get very excited on budget day, and he is to my left, Simon O'Connor. Could you sleep last night?
Oh, look, I just couldn't contain the excitement. God, I can't do that with enough sarcasm, can I?
No, you can't. Now, if you do want to give us comment, come through on the Facebook page, Family First Facebook page, so we can see your comments come up on screen, and also through our YouTube account. But of course, we are across a whole lot of platforms today. Anyway, they called it not a budget of rainbows or unicorns. I thought they might be getting themselves into a little bit of trouble on that particular one. Simon, just for the benefit of us non-political plebs, just what's going on in the background? I mean, I sort of imagine the Minister of Finance sitting there, and there's a whole lot of cabinet ministers all coming in and saying, please give me some money so that I look good. And they're all squabbling and fighting, and it's actually a real bun fight. Is that what it's really like?
So, sort of, actually. Look, it ultimately is the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister's call of what to and not to do. But for months before a budget, in fact, to not exaggerate things, Bob, from tomorrow, ministers will now be planning for the next budget. And so they go to their ministries, so let's say the Ministry of Health or Education, and start saying, what do we need? What's the projections for the future? Then ministers sit down in subcommittees, cabinet subcommittees, and they debate and argue there. And when I say argue, I mean, it's not a punch-up, but they're robust because every minister wants more money for their ministry because it makes them look good without being too cynical. Of course, they also want the best for the country, but they debate and argue within those subcommittees, and then that goes up to the Minister of Finance to approve or not. So it's actually a huge amount of work.
Okay, now I guess the problem with New Zealand that I saw, and we were going to talk about this on Straight Talk on Monday night, but we ran out of time. But the problem is that our debt has just been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, even with a so-called conservative government. So I guess one of the questions I'm going to ask you once we sort of get into the specifics, and just for the benefit of the audience, we won't spend too long on the budget because I know your eyes will start to glaze up and you'll nod off. And it's only, 3 minutes past 5, so it's far too early or too late for a nap and too early for bed. But just a quick explainer. So this is the type of things that the government supports, and you can see, or funds, and you can see, a huge area around super for the oldies, like Simon, well, actually me, 3 years to go. So I'm looking forward to that. So that green bit's going to expand quite a bit shortly with all us baby boomers. Social support, so it's Ministry of Social Development and all that. Health is a biggie. Education is a biggie. And then sort of less down on finance, housing and transport. And where do we get the money from? Well, it's kind of a toss-up between our wages and our GST, and then companies actually don't pay that much, but of course a lot of company money profits go to individual earners. So that's how they recover that. Just before we get into the specifics, could you just get a message to your colleagues, Simon, that this is the type of thing that we really don't want on budget day? Yeah. So that's Ryan Hamilton from Hamilton East, National MP. They really love the TikTok, don't they, Simon?
Yeah, they do seem a bit obsessed with it. I mean, budget days at one level are, a bit of fun. It is probably the most important political event of the year. I mean, it's ultimately the government setting out how it's going to spend your money, and the quirky traditions have got in. But I sometimes wonder, MPs, we don't, if I could use that to collectively involve myself, we don't always present the best foot forward. It becomes a little bit cursory or cosmetic rather than, getting down to business. But yeah, I would just say quickly, Bob, for people, of course, the budget only got read at 2:00 today. So you and I have been working like dogs trying to get our head around it.
I have been pulling some hours since 2:00, I can tell you. So one thing I did notice that I thought I'd just show the audience. So we've had this huge furor around Te Pāti Māori and whether they should be present and that their voice was important in Parliament. And, why should they be suspended for 21 days? So we will come back to that at a later topic. But this is what happened at the House at 2 p.m. Their seats were vacant. So the budget was passed to nobody. Yeah, so that's kind of like, I'm not quite sure why they even stay in Parliament. They don't have the integrity to be there. So, and then, when they're called up to meetings, they don't show. But anyway, let's just have a look at the data, because this is the overall statistic, and basically it shows that we are in debt. So the yellow circle bottom right there is 2025, and if we're below that big thick black line that I've drawn there, that means we're in deficit. So we're not doing too well, and there's kind of these predictions that it's all going to increase soon, but is it?
Well, no. This is the worrying thing. So again, for people, this is just like your home accounts in many ways. The government is spending far more than it's getting in, which is why we're in substantial deficits. Personally, I think the forecast, which is the dotted lines moving onwards to the right or the left, depending on one's perspective, is overly optimistic. The economy is growing just slightly at the moment. Our productivity remains low. The trading environment is difficult. So it's not as if there's fresh sunshine ahead to give us lots and lots of optimism. And we'll probably talk about it in a moment, but the government is still spending actually more than it did last year, more than the Labour government that left, and we can explain a little bit of why. But we're still spending extraordinary amounts. We're borrowing more. This is a problem. It's a big problem. And it's in many ways, Bob, we're ultimately governments, doesn't matter if it's the blue team at the moment or the red team in the past, they're kicking the can of very difficult decisions down the road.
Okay, so do you want to, we've got a couple of graphs just to show briefly before everybody's eyes glaze over. So if you can give us the Reader's Digest version of this for the non-accountants, this was one that you thought was interesting.
So this is just health, for example. Look, budget documents, if you want to fall asleep, go and read them. So every ministry, every department, this one's health, has literally hundreds of pages explaining everything they're doing and lots of numbers. But often you just need to go to, this is page 6, and you look for this total annual appropriations. And what that's telling you, and it's the one at the bottom, it says, thank you, now I can read it better. It's that bottom line that's got the 30,555. And by the way, that's in millions. In other words, you add another 3 zeros onto it. So in fact, this is in the billions. But what it's saying is that in 24-25, they budgeted, the final budget amount was 30 something. How much have they actually spent? 29, and then how much they pay in next year. In other words, it's a really quick way to go, is the pie expanding or contracting? And in this case, genuinely the government is putting more money in. 31 is higher than 29 and it's higher than 30.
Okay, so if we look at just some of the individual things, let me just enlarge in that. So the orange represents more money. So more money on health, more on super, more on social development, a little bit more on education, big lot on transport there, and then corrections and courts. This is probably the one that you were interested in just explaining. So I'm interested to know what this one actually shows.
So this was actually done by David Farrar, so just to give him credit there, because there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, it's an austerity budget, the government's been slashing and cutting. Well, no, it hasn't. It's actually spending more, and he's here contrasting what Grant Robertson would have expected to be spending this year, because when you do a budget, it's not just for the year, you forecast out for at least 4 years. So what Farrar's doing here, and let's take the absolute top number, is that a Labour government was expecting to spend 147.6 billion. Actually, Nicola Willis, or this current coalition, has spent 150.3. That makes me nervous. The overall spend is huge. Like it just keeps going up. But then importantly for people to see, social security, health, education, these are all going up. In fact, they're they are spending more into these areas than even Labor was proposing. So on the positive side, the coalition government is investing in health and education and transport. However, this is all coming at a cost, one that we cannot afford.
Okay, so maybe just before we move on from the budget, just a couple of top line issues that you thought were interesting. The ones that I saw was that the government's decreasing their input into KiwiSaver, their top up. So if you earn over 180,000, there's no government top up. They're going to means test Best Start, which is kind of your 18, 19-year-old kids who aren't studying, are just sitting at home. So they're going to check it against the family income. Lots more money into truancy, which, I've been involved in that truancy side of things. It seems like every year we pour bucket loads of money into it and it just keeps on going. 164 for urgent and after hours healthcare. So, the health area, I think that's the Achilles heel of the government. So any spending in that area has got to be a good thing. And like you said, New Zealand will return to a surplus by 2029, apparently, when we may have a new government. Who knows? So what were your top line ones? Were there any ones that you specifically stuck out for you? Oh, boot camps as well.
Yeah, boot camp. Yeah. Well, actually picking up on a couple of yours, you're right around the truancy. Money's not going to solve it. Parents taking responsibility for their children will, and in behind that is good, strong, stable families, as we know. Also, really quickly, you talked about Best Start and unemployment. There's actually two things there. Best Start is the payment for the first 3 years to parents with children, and the government's actually means testing that now. So
right.
I'm genuinely 50-50 on that. Part of me has always been nervous about just government handing money out, but I have to say, and perhaps with a family first sort of lens on, actually giving monies to new parents is actually a good thing. But did they give
a line on that when that family support decreases? Was that the one that was around 90,000 or something, household income?
It could be. I'd have to look at the details. But you're also right. We just mixed two things there. They're also saying, actually, if your 18 or 19-year-old wants to go on the unemployment benefit, it's going to have to be mean tested against the parents. In other words, all those 18 and 19-year-olds who just effectively leave home and go on to the dole, that's going to stop because the parents are going to have to stump up, basically, to cover it. So that's one of the ways the government's saving money. Look, my overall impression is ultimately twofold. One is, I think, Bob, they've overpromised and underdelivered. And I hate to say that of, sort of what's been my team, but it's been huge talk that this would be a budget, for example, facilitating growth. There's basically nothing in it. There is some changes around effectively depreciation. That's not a bad thing.
Businesses.
But the budget, businesses, don't get me wrong, that's a good thing. But it's going to give 1% growth over 20 years. And you've heard me right, 1% growth over 20 years. So it's hardly headline breaking. It just, again, I think the way that they've pitched it. The other quick thing is, and I think I'm taking this from Cameron Baggery, the economist, they've effectively robbed Peter to pay Paul. So huge savings, obviously, from pay equity, the changes to KiwiSaver, but they're not pocketing those savings. They're just spending them elsewhere. And that's, again, why we're not heading back towards surplus. It's why we're going to end up at 46, 47% of our GDP to debt. In other words, our debt is the equivalent of 47% of our total income or our total GDP. I mean, these are eye-watering numbers. And again, I'll finish here. We've got to turn the boat around. As you can see, it's just going up and up and up. And, to put it really crudely, it may not be you and I having to pay this off. It'll be our children and grandchildren. We're spending too much, and that's the long and the short of it.
Okay, couple of responses. One of the funny parts during the budget was this particular clip.
The budget invests $480 million more to support police on the front line to crack down on crime and keep our communities safe. We will not be defunding the police.
Yeah, I thought that was quite clever. A little jibe at the defund the police from the Green Party. Chris Hipkins stood up in his response, and I thought he told a complete porky in his first sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that all the words after that be deleted and replaced with, "This House has no confidence in the government because it has chosen to pay for its budget by cutting the future wages of working women."
Okay, cutting the future wages of working women. Apparently women are working for free, according to Chris Hipkins. I mean, he needs to get his language right. I think I know that what he's trying to say, but he needs to get it right. Christopher Luxon was right to call out that the Greens have come out with some very wacky tax policies and extra taxes, and Labor haven't denied supporting them.
But the question I've got to say is, when he got the chance, did you actually hear Chris Hipkins rule any of it out? No. Did he actually rule out the wealth tax? No. Did he rule out the inheritance tax? No. Did he rule out the trust tax? Did he take that off the table? No.
Yeah, so I can see the strategy is going to be that National are going to try and align Labor with the wackiness and the extreme of the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, and we're coming back to both of those parties shortly. Just one other, just before I get your comment, before we move on from this riveting topic of the budget, Simon, was that there was a speech by Shane Jones, and I just want to show you a clip from it because only he could have said this.
I'm sick to death as a leading Māori identity in this Parliament, not seeing a quality of leadership from either iwi hapu to not only eradicate the gangs, but to get the old type of leadership that defined the Māori community. Wake up early, look after your children, look after yourselves, a balance of faith, and no more huckers of victimhood. Don't tell this House that the reason the haka exists here is because of victim ideology or colonisation. There are lots of people of my descent in this House who are proud to own the traditions and obligations and duties of being a parliamentarian, which is why we are giving our speeches on the budget today.
Yeah, pretty strong words. Only he could have said that though, eh, Simon?
Oh, yeah, very, very much. But he's right. I mean, the great irony with Te Pāti Māori is they talk a big game about colonisation and importing culture wars, and yet they are the ones who import and colonise themselves with basically communist, far-left dogma, intersectionality, progressivism, and so forth. So, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's quite funny. Look, I think not to give any political advice to Labor, but they're going to have to get their tax policy for the next election sorted and very clear, because you're right, Bob. Christopher Luxon's speech is showing how they will attack Labor. You know, is this tax in, yes or no? So Labor will have to be, for their sake, exceptionally clear. But the flip side is there too for National and the coalition government. How are they going to cut spending? Because again, savings that were found in this budget have just been spent elsewhere. You know, with your household budget, it's all good that you saved yourself $20 on fuel this week, but if you go out and buy yourself some chips and a glass of wine, you haven't actually moved forward or backward. So this is what the government's really got to wrestle with.
Yep. Okay. Is that all we want to talk about the budget? It's probably just another day. I mean, yeah. I still think that health and education are the two Achilles heel on the government at the moment. Those are the ones. I did see massive spend up for defence. What was it? No, I can't find it now. But $9 billion uplift in defence. Yeah, $9 billion. Wow.
So a lot of that's capital injections, which sorely needed. And I'm, you know, former chair of Foreign Affairs and Defence, I'm all for this stuff. But, big but, where's it coming from? Like, you know, this is part of the reason the government continues to be spending more, why the debt is going up. It's not the only reason, but again, these are enormous amounts of money, and the trajectory has to change. One really last quick observation for the two people left listening to us talking about the budget. Today, people get in the political circle often think this is an exceptionally exciting day. If you're in government, the ministers know what's coming, but the MPs only get informed at the very last moment, and most of what they have to do is scripted They just basically are there, like I was in government, to say it's a wonderful budget, talking lines from their ministers. So actually it's a relatively easy day for government. For the opposition, it's a busier day because, like you and I, they only get the documents at 2 o'clock. So opposition MPs, as I was, will be furiously reading through hundreds and hundreds of pages, trying to find out where the money shifted and so forth. Yeah, it's a fascinating little game. But anyway, that's the budget.
Okay, well, everyone will be pleased to know that we have moved on from that one. All right, let's go to topic number 3. Interesting one, and I've called it Wayward Winston. And the claim is being made is that Winston is calling out the bad behaviour in Parliament, but is it actually Winston who has been part of the problem? And there was actually an article that I read that talked about the fact that last year he was ordered to withdraw a statement where he accused Te Pāti Māori co-leader Debbie Ngāriwa of making a retard comment in Parliament. Then there was one where he called some of the comments sick idiots.
Point of order, the right on Winston. Speaker, listen to that barrage. What could we suggest to you that maybe we do a few courses on how the House should be run and how MPs behave. If you want to compete, then put your mind together, get some understanding of it, and not just shout out like a sick idiot every time you don't agree with something.
Okay, so he got in a bit of trouble for calling other politicians sick idiots. He called... he got kicked out of the House in 2012 for calling National MP Jerry Brownlee an illiterate woodwork teacher, which I'm not quite sure is an insult anyway. He also mocked Simon Bridges, who had a particular twang sound when he said mining. He used to say moining, and Winston had to go at him.
Whatever that industry called moining is, I'm having difficulty trying to understand it. We've not banned that either.
Yeah, and I think it was China and Choina. It was just a particular accent that Simon had. But, I mean, Winston was mocking that type of behaviour. He called Brownlee, Chris Finlayson and Marama Fox an unsightly trio of drama queens. I'm not quite sure if that's an insult. And he used to call David Seymour a cuckold and a cuck, which I know sounds like an offensive word, but I looked it up, C-U-C-K. I mean, it seems like other words, but apparently it's a subservient or weakness or contemptuous or contemptible in a man. A contemptuous term for a left-wing male, apparently. So a cuck might be a suitable term. It just sounds really bad. And of course, Winston Peters is the one complaining about the bad behaviour. Now, before I ask your observations, Simon, so this was the point put to some of the other leaders about Winston's behaviour.
Winston Peters.
Could I ask?
Not that one, sorry,
Peters
this one.
holds the record for being suspended the most.
What's your record so far over the course of your career? Does it beat your record?
Well, I've never been suspended for 21 days.
No, but have you been suspended for
No.
1 day?
Not that I recall, no.
That's my record.
Chris Hipkins says you hold the record. So.
Oh, well, Chris Hipkins say a lot of things. But he's a sausage eater who doesn't know what a woman is.
Okay, so I mean, Winston throws volleys around the labels and the terms a lot. He gets in a lot of trouble. So I guess the question is, Simon, is he the one who should be calling out bad behaviour, or is he actually the naughty boy in the corner that's winding up everybody?
Oh, look, Winston will always seize on a political opportunity. And so, you don't have to be perfect in order to make an observation around the decorum of Parliament. So actually, I'm quite happy and relaxed that he is. We talked about it last week. The standards are slipping. The second point is, I think Winston is no angel. He's mischievous. He knows the rules. He knows how to get close to the wind and the line, and to cross it. And look, he's been a troublemaker from day one in his behaviour. So he's no saint, and he's, if you will, part of the problem. Name calling different people, jibing insults, disrupting the flow of the House with his inane points of order. So he is part of the problem. But the third point too is, and I think to be slightly fair on him, there is, I think, a difference of degree. So, if you're looking, for example, at the haka, the threatening language, the contemptuous attitude towards MPs is quite different to throwing insults around the House. So those would be my 3 points. I still think he can comment, but yeah, he would do well, Bob, to look in the mirror at the way he acts at times.
Yeah. And I think it's when it's physical threats like Julianne Genter going over and standing over a national MP, or when it's Debbie Naru or Packer actually pretending to point a gun and doing the haka, sort of the intimidation, or the fisty fight outside with Trevor Mallard and Toe Henare that time.
Toe Henare.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's sort of getting to the extreme. But then again, saying the C word in Parliament, it's all part of a gradual drift, isn't it? And then it kind of gets in. I guess the question we ask ourselves is this the type of behaviour we want to demonstrate to younger people who are watching? I always think that that's a kind of a good yardstick to say, well, is this the type of behaviour you want young people to be modelling? And what I'm seeing in Parliament at the moment is, no, it's definitely not. Their behaviour is terrible.
Yeah, it is, and it's across the whole line. So it doesn't matter if it's, as you mentioned, storming across as Julianne did, the punch up years ago, the haka of recent times. I mean, you could even add in the silliness of TikTok, through to how Winston and others act. Most MPs throw jibes across the House, and I won't be able to explain it fully here, and I'm not trying to justify it, but it's there's a heat and an energy in the debate. But it's all playing into the lack of decorum, and Winston is part of the problem. But good on him calling it out. Again, just because he's part of the problem doesn't mean that you can't call it out. But I will just share this. As I sat in Parliament, and I'm sorry if I've shared it before, but you can look up to the gallery and you see people often bringing their kids in, and you get the feeling, because you don't know what's been said, but you get the feeling the parents have explained to the children, this is an important place. These are important people doing important work. And then the performances you've just shared and the MPs buffooning around, you can see the parents' face, well, the kids' face is delighted because they think it's hilarious. But the parents now scrambling to try and explain to them why these important people doing important things are acting like, clowns. I always found that amusing. Again, it's me speculating from facial gestures, as I said, looking up to the galleries. But MPs don't help themselves. And again, Winston's part of it, the Māori Party's part of it, National's part of it, Labour, Greens, ACT, they're all part of it. So, yeah.
Okay, well, Winston argues that it's about free speech, and we're free speech proponents ourselves. But Winston got caught in a very interesting situation where he was doing a special public event outside at a train station, and somebody decided to have a go at him.
Who said bollocks?
Load of bollocks, Winston.
Well, you look like bollocks. Go look in the mirror, sunshine. You look like
Don't
bollocks.
call me sunshine.
You look like bollocks, mate.
Sunshine?
Yeah.
Oh, you've been called
No,
sunshine.
naff
since
off.
bloody Donald Trump was a
Naff
baby.
off.
You're a toff.
Why don't you naff off?
Oh, why don't you naff
Yeah, look
off?
at you.
What are you going to naff
You
off?
come and get a
You're 8
headline?
years old now.
Hey?
This is the time you
Oh, it's an age thing, is it?
No one wants to see you.
You look like
idiot.
you look
You're a
older than I
moron.
do. You look older than I do, mate.
Lick Trump's.
You look young.
Get out of here. Get out.
Get lost.
And don't bloody
Get lost.
leave your Murraydom people.
You just
the way
came
you-
so you're defending
bloody
Murray now, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're defending Murray now. Well, that'll be new for you, wouldn't it? Okay,
You know
thanks,
nothing.
guys.
You're a f***ing moron.
Oh, and you swear as well, eh?
Okay, that really ticked him off when he called him an effing moron at the end. I mean, gee, part of you says, well, Winston brought it on because he started sledging him, and as soon as you start sledging someone, then expect the sledges to come back at you. That's what I always tell players on the football field when I'm refereeing. But one of the interesting things, so nobody knew this guy, nobody knew the company that he worked for, but then, of course, the name of the company came out, and I mean, kind of ironically, Simon, just before we talk about the free speech aspect, is that apparently he works for some company called Tonkin Taylor, which seems to be a pretty woke company because it's got their rainbow committee. And this is our friend who apparently is involved in the Transgender Day of Visibility. So sounds like this Tonkin company is a little bit woke. So, and the reason I highlight that is not to highlight the guy himself, but it's actually to show this is probably why he doesn't like Winston Peters, for obvious reasons. Obviously has a very different view especially with some of Winston's policies. But then again, so here's a scenario, Simon. We turn up at the Britomart in Auckland, and Chloe Swarbrick from the Greens is doing some announcement again about some wacky policy that she's come up with. Is it okay for us to have a bit of a shouting match with her?
Well, it's perfectly legal, but it's not the done thing. I suppose that's where this guy sort of crossed the line, more of decorum. So has the guy done anything illegal? No. Are politicians used to people yelling at them? Yes. I note the irony that he's part of this diversity tolerance sort of stuff, and yet, of course, doesn't allow Winston to well, he wasn't particularly tolerant of Winston, was he? So basically, we don't operate like that. It's not illegal, allowed to do it. I think it is a free speech issue. He's allowed to. But this is one of the things I love about Winston, actually. I disagree with him on a number of things, but most politicians, we have people abuse us like that all the time. You're at a public meeting, you're out and about, someone starts yelling and screaming and acting like a twit. Most of the time, most MPs will not speak back. It's just not the done thing. But Winston just takes the bull by the horns and goes for it. And it's sort of refreshing in a way.
Yeah, exactly. But there is a difference. Like if you were to have a go in a public space at a public meeting wearing your Family First hat and your Family First shirt, it's probably likely that I might be more upset about that than if you're just doing it as an individual. And I think the problem in this setting was that he was clearly identified with his business because he was wearing a lanyard or something, and it was a business that does direct business or something with the government. So does that mean that your free speech is curtailed when you are clearly identified as belonging to a company? Because companies do put free speech limits on in terms of social media, which I'm not sure I have a problem for if you're speaking on behalf of the company or could be seen as speaking on behalf of the company. But if it's in your private capacity on your personal social media or in your personal life, then I do see the difference. I know there's a bit of a grey area in the middle, but there is a difference, isn't there?
Look, there is a difference. I'm personally concerned of the growing reach of codes of conduct from companies and NGOs and other groups, even within the civil service, which says, oh, look, because you work for us, even in your private life, you're not allowed to say, do, or suggest anything that goes against that. And more often than not, it's around progressive values. So if you have a view on gender care or abortion or euthanasia or the treaty, oh no, you can't do that. So that makes me nervous about the overreach. I think we are allowed to hold private opinions and to express them however we want through our private accounts, and our companies shouldn't be involved. It does get a bit more of a line call in this situation. Someone put to me rightly, if you're following a liveried car for, I don't know, a painting company, and they're waving their fists and screaming and yelling at you out the window, if I was the boss of that company, like you were Family First, if I was saying something wrong, would be rightly unimpressed. But this one's a bit of a line call for me. I mean, everyone talks about the lanyard, but for me, that's almost quite minor. He was going to work. He wasn't wearing a huge sign saying Tonkin Taylor. It's a bit more of a line call of whether really this is the company's business or not. I suppose the fact that it has reached front page news does put a lot of pressure on the company. But it's a line call. You can see me hesitate because these aren't easy decisions. But I think for those who really want to slam the guy and want the business to take responsibility, just be aware businesses in general, I'm not just talking about this one, are forcing more and more people into their codes of conduct, which affects everyday life and the ability to speak into a lot of the issues that you and I talk about, Bob. If you're a nurse, doctors, they say, no, actually, don't share your views on euthanasia. Don't share your views on life issues. Don't share your issues on drugs. You just got to keep it quiet. If you're affirming it all, that's great. Go and celebrate it. Put up your pride pictures. But don't you dare do the alternative, or else we'll come for you. And that's a problem.
I mean, Winston must have expected that there'd be some heat. I mean, he's standing at Wellington Railway Station. Wellington isn't exactly the bastion of Conservative voting for New Zealand First. But if it had been at the weekend and this guy was just operating in his totally personal capacity, then I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. I think that it's just that there's that possible link and perception that you are representing the company if it's during kind of the working hours, isn't it? I mean, like, there's a difference if you turn up, if you're getting off the train in the middle of the weekend after going to a football match and you have a spray at Chloe doing her announcement at Britomart, that's slightly different than if it's a working week and, you know, you've just spoken at a Family First function, isn't it?
Again, it's where you draw the line. I haven't delved rather into the deep specifics here. I mean, if he's at the train station, he was probably outside work hours. Just how obvious was he to be Tonkin Taylor?
On his way to work.
On his way to work. Again, where do you draw the line? And, you know, the corollary or the flip side is true. Had this been someone heckling Chloe Swarbrick, I can tell you now the media wouldn't have been persecuting they would have been very much backing Chloe in this case. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think being able to say what you think is important. Where exactly is that line between obviously clearly representing the company and a company preventing you from having your say?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Dean says it wasn't free speech, it was belligerent activism. I mean, it was pretty full on, wasn't it? Entity says if you're on the clock or wearing work attire, you abide by their rules, otherwise you're free to your opinion. I think
that's the point, though, is personally, free speech isn't about how you deliver it. Look, that was mild. You know, I've had far worse abuse hurled at me, and to be honest, that's free speech. They're allowed to have their say, and then, if you excuse the French, bugger off. But to Earthly's one, it's again, where do you draw the line? You're dead right if you're in the company livery, driving the company car, pulling up outside a political rally and screaming ain't the right thing to do. But just how much further into your life should your business and your HR department be telling you what you can and cannot talk about?
Okay, Troy says if you can have a respectful debate with public speakers, but if you have to resort to insult and swearing or the use of force, your argument is clearly not strong enough. And here's an interesting one from Ricky. I got fired for calling out Helen Clark in public that got airtime back then. And I also attended a employment meeting with a supporter who supported one of my posts when I congratulated Jacinda Ardern for getting engaged and talked about the importance of marriage. And he got in trouble, and it was on my social media, and he was just commenting as an individual. Now, in that particular case, he asked me to come along with him as a supporter. And while we're sitting in the meeting, I had a look at the social media of the personnel lady that was giving him a hard time. And there was all these posts, pro-Greens, pro-voting yes in the cannabis referendum. As soon as I highlighted that, the meeting was ended. So sometimes we have to call out the hypocrisy of this, this approach. It depends, like you said. I didn't read in the media about you getting abused. Simon, which paper was that in?
Well, the main reason is I've never run off to the papers. I mean, we've touched on this before. You know, the Chloes and others, the Māori Party, will go running to the media at every opportunity to claim their victimhood. In fact, it's underlining what Shane Jones was talking about. I never went to the media. You just sort of suck it up. You don't need to highlight it. In some ways, I think it gives satisfactions to the people who are abusive or death threats or others. So again, it's just a different way we handle things. And maybe that's my quick last point on this, is just because a Benjamin Doyle or a Chloe Swarbrick talk about death threats, they're not the only ones. It's an unfortunate part of our public life, but some of us don't run about trying to be victims. Some of us just stand up for what we believe and get on with the job.
Okay, well, that was a great segue into Chloe. So we've done New Zealand first. We've done we're going to do Te Pāti Māori. We've done Labour and National for the Budget Day. So I've been watching some of Chloe's recent media interviews. Fortunately, I've been able to watch them at 2 times the speed thanks to YouTube and things. But I actually think, because I've debated her back in 2018, I debated her at the start of the cannabis referendum, and I actually found that she's not hard to debate because there's not a lot of data or statistics. It's just nice, eloquent language. And she turns up for this budget interview after the Greens announced their, what did the Herald call it? They said it was wacky, wasn't it, or something? Delusional. I mean, the New Zealand Herald called the Greens budget delusional, which is fairly strong. But anyway, she turns up to this interview with Jack Tame, and to Jack Tame's credit, he did push her a bit, but she had no answers. Have a watch.
How did you account for capital flight? Why wouldn't wealthy New Zealanders just move overseas?
Yeah, so that has been accounted for through avoidance measures and otherwise, and they've been independently.
What are the numbers?
Well, they've been independently. Off the top of my head, I'm more than happy to get the granular detail for you and come back to you on the specifics of. I mean,
there's a big part of it, though, right?
But what those marginal calculations actually are.
Have you changed your accounting for capital flight to account for the additional taxes that you are now proposing?
I'm going to be completely honest with you and say that I'm going to need to come back with you to you on those details.
It's an obvious question. What are wealthy people going to do? Are they going to go overseas? That's a risk that Treasury has identified. And if you can't tell us how you've accounted for that risk and you want to be considered adult and serious...
What I'm telling you is that we have accounted for those risks, but I don't have those specific figures for you off the top of my head, and I'm more than happy to come back to you on that. And I'm more than happy to talk about the substance of all of this, but again, I don't think that it's a constructive debate if we're just focusing on those gotcha moments.
Yeah, just the gotcha moments when you ask for details of a budget. So then later this week, beginning of this week, she appeared on Radio New Zealand. They must have some thing where they interview people for 30 minutes, and she was asked a couple of questions. I just want to show you a couple of quick clips because my premise, Simon, and I'm interested in your view, is that it's okay when she's kind of the renegade backbencher like the Te Pāti Māori young woman, Hannah Rafferty Maipi Clark. But now she's the co-leader. She's got to be the big grown-up serious person with all the statistics, and she's got to bring people with her. And I don't know if she has. Anyway, she was asked, what I found interesting about this interview was that Guy Espiner, who's no right-wing conservative at all, was asking some pretty searching questions. Have a listen to how we dealt with this one.
You look at the Trumpian anti-woke backlash and think there are lessons I can learn about my own language, my own approach, so we don't provoke such a backlash. I mean, are you taking any humility from the pendulum swinging back so hard?
I can understand the frustration that people are feeling and that's out there at the moment. You know, after 40 years of trickle-down economics, people are not healthier, people are not happier, people are not safer. In fact, unfortunately, the opposite is true. And I think what you're seeing with some of those kind of strongmen, self-styled politicians is that they are deciding to punch down and focus people's energy on minority groups that have come to the fore as a result of, for example, affirmative action policies or otherwise, and try and say, oh, it's the migrants or it's those from the rainbow community.
Okay, so yeah, apparently it's trickle-down economics that has resulted in the anti-woke backlash. And then just one other, she was asked, when she first did her maiden speech as co-leader, I think, she said that she wanted the Greens to become the alternative opposition, not Labour. So she was asked about that.
You said on taking over the Green Party co-leadership that you wanted to supplant Labour as the major force on the...
I didn't say it that explicitly. I said that we need to be the largest force on the left, and that's absolutely continued to be my aspiration.
Well, that's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but I think that
I just feel that she's got to the level in politics where you actually need concrete, objective data and facts, and bluster and lots of nice sentences just ain't going to work, and it's not looking good. Even the media are starting to pressure her. What do you think?
There's a couple of thoughts. I mean, look, well out of her depth. Look, from the day that she ran for mayor, she's been fated as someone quite amazing and skilled, but that substance, I'm sorry to say, isn't there. And again, it was, I don't know, a wave that was surfed and still in some ways trying to be surfed since those Auckland mayoralty days, where again, a few easy slogans, sort of youthful exuberance went a long way. Now, as the leader, she should know and is expected to know the detail. And I'll go as far to say I don't think she has any idea. The way she was responding to Jack Tame as the classic politician's answer, oh yeah, I can get you the details later, because of course there's no interview later. She doesn't know the details, doesn't know the substance. So that's a significant problem. The other is that, we talked about before, the Greens are no longer actually a Green party. I've referred to them as watermelons, green on the outside, red in the middle. They are fully captured by progressivism, intersectionality, and so forth. But the other point is, she in particular, but the Greens are no longer the bad boys. They've been outflanked by Te Pāti Māori. If you want the radical on the left, it's Te Pāti Māori. And they have people who are younger. And that's no offence to Chloe, but all of us in politics, you can start out as the bright, shiny new thing, which she once was, but that's no longer there. There's more exciting radicals than the Greens. And I think this is one of the reasons the party is struggling. I think it's why she is struggling, because you can go to the Maori party now and get a lot more revolutionary talk. And to be fair, on some of the Maori party, they do know the substance of their policy, which is where we started from here. She clearly has no idea. And that's actually last point too. Why would you put the co-leader forward to discuss the financial policies when they don't know it? Why would you put someone else up? And the answer to that is there's no one in the Greens who actually understands financial policy. It's all just slogans and suggestions.
Yeah, I think they were going to use Benjamin Doyle, but he had a meeting at the Burnett Foundation.
Well, also the budget documents weren't written in emoji.
Okay, let's move on. Speaking of another party, so interesting tactic around Te Pāti Māori. So let's just check the media coverage on this one.
I move that this debate be now adjourned to Thursday, 5 June 2025.
And we've been trying to talk to them for the last 48 hours. They haven't even bothered to return phone calls, and then they do this. They just look like they're out of their depth. I don't know what they're doing.
National were asked if they had any motions, any amendments, and they denied. So it seems like they're playing buggery with the House. They are intentionally creating chaos and throwing their weight around like bullies.
I think they panic, Lloyd. I think they panic. They know that, they don't want, this could have gone on and on and on. And so, they want to get a budget out, so they probably came to their senses here.
I've just made the decision, or the government has made the decision, that given the importance of the budget to the process, it's better to just adjourn the debate for now. Let's just take the temperature down a notch. Emotions are running high. It's a heated issue, I acknowledge that. Let's just take the temperature down a notch and we'll debate it in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay, so I think, delaying the whole bluster around the suspension on Te Pāti Māori, they delay it so that Te Pāti Māori can be present at the budget and be involved with what is one of the, show events of the year, which they didn't turn up to today, ironically. Here's another couple of comments. Apparently it was all bullying.
Absolute show of bullying, absolute show of actually running chaos in the House.
I think it would have been better, having started the debate, for the government to allow the debate to finish.
This is about not getting distracted by things that fundamentally don't move the dial for New Zealanders.
And I think that's exactly right. I actually thought, wow, that's actually quite a decent move to say, let's delay it. Let's not vote to chuck out 3 members of a political party in budget week. I thought it was an act of graciousness, to be honest, but here they all are saying that it was the worst thing that the government could have done. So have I missed something?
No, I think you're right. In fact, I fully and totally agree with Chris Bishop. I actually think it's a very reasonable thing that he did. The response from the Green Party and others is the usual faux outrage. What they call bullying is called voting. If you get more votes, you win. That's called democracy. The Greens hate that. They only want their way. But at the end of the day, the issues with Te Pāti Māori are serious. They are putting a giant middle finger to the parliamentary and democratic processes. It is serious, but it's also a sideshow in the grand scheme of things. And the budget, as we touched on earlier, this is the most important, I'm trying to think of the right way to quickly phrase it, series of decisions. I mean, this is ultimately at the heart of government, is spending your taxpayer dollars, and the government not only needs to put the budget down as they have today, but to pass legislation and to debate it. Would you prefer to be doing that or talking about the shenanigans of the Māori Party? And that's what would have happened. Had this debate continued, it could go on for days and days and days, and I'm not exaggerating. Every MP gets to speak. Every MP can put down amendments. Every amendment gets talked to. So this could be a huge, huge distraction. And look, kicking the can down the road for a couple more weeks will make no difference. In fact, Chris is probably, as in Bishop, Chris Bishop is probably right. It might actually just take a bit of the heat out of things as well. But the budget is more important than the Maori Party.
Okay. Gosh, the hour's flowing. Just very quickly, just to finish with, I did want to show you this clip, and I just want us to remember this when we have the next March for Life or any protest on Parliament grounds that involves about 200 people, which Te Pāti Māori had yesterday. Have a listen to the media coverage.
While the debate may have been cut short inside Parliament, out here the people's voices have been heard, and some of them are promising they'll be back.
Oh, that's great. I hope the people's voices for pro-life and the March for Life are heard, and the media gives us that lovely coverage. So actually that leads us to our final topic that we'll squeeze in, and that's just the apology from the media after they called out misogyny against female MPs, and then one of their female MPs committed misogyny against a female journalist committed misogyny against a female MP by calling her the C word. So Andrea Vance did an apology in the newspaper and basically said that, look, it was a serious situation. So apparently you can use the C word when it's a serious situation. Thanks, Andrea. Don't tell my kids that. She said that she said prepared to be a C. She didn't say is a C or was a C. So apparently that's different, Simon. I never knew that. That if you just say someone's prepared to be a offensive word, that's not actually being that. And then she finished by saying that the lawmakers had steadfastly refused to hold social media companies to account or meaningfully tackle the polarisation of our society and discourse. So she wants social media to be accountable, but she doesn't want to be accountable herself. It was a classic article in gaslighting, and it just shows the hypocrisy of the media. Anyway, you want to have a rant before we finish?
Oh, no, I probably bored people enough with my budget insights than ranting. But look, it's the classic arrogance of the progressives. And Andrea falls into that something is wrong, except when they're the ones doing it. So misogyny is wrong, but it's okay if they're misogynist. Racism is wrong, but it's okay if they're racist, and so on and so forth. And we talk about it here often. It's one of the key reasons why mainstream media are collapsing, is because Kiwis can see through it. And if I might link it back to the budget, it's got nothing to do with stuff I see. Actually, Radio New Zealand's budget has been gutted by the government, and that's a big plus because they're just completely woke and they rely on your taxpayer dollars and mine. So there's some good news, not a rant, good news to finish.
Yeah, I did. I saw that their budget has been dropped by something like 19 million out of a budget of, do we pay 80 or 90 million dollars to Radio New Zealand? So
it's a significant cut. But always remember, not just at you, Bob, but to viewers, most of the figures which the government will quote is for 4 years. So if you read there's a $100 billion increase in Sector A, that's usually over 4 years. And so just factor that in, because of course governments will want you to sort of assume that that's $100 million or $1 billion right now. But no, it's a significant cut on Red Radio, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Okay, well, for those who have no life or maybe can't get to sleep, 6 o'clock news is roaring up, so we need to get out of here. So well done, Simon. Fantastic stuff. We've all stayed awake, and we will be back next Thursday night for Political Playback and all the other programs as well. So are you in charge of cooking tonight, Simon? I'm interested just to know what's on the menu.
I am actually. My wife is with my foster daughter at netball, so I'm going to do up a curry after this. How exciting is that? With the price of butter, it's not butter chicken, I can tell you that.
Is that the curry from down the road? You know, the nice curry.
That's right. That's right. It looks like a Big Mac. Oh, no, it's not. I made it myself.
Okay, we're out of here. Thanks for watching, team. Have a great night.